Hey friends, this is Alex from Vulture Culture, and this is Valhalla Shimmer. Oof. Just keeps going. So, this video is a long time coming. Back in 2018, I recorded a series called Making a Synth Pop EBM Track. And by the way, I'll put the playlist for that in the description. It's really great if you want to watch me make an entire synth pop song. However, I was using this plugin back then, and I'm like, wow, I still haven't done a review of it. And Valhalla is the makers of the best reverb plugins out there, in my opinion. John Costello, the man. And Shimmer was his first product. And as such, it's actually a really great one to review because we've only got these, 9 knobs on it, right? Compared to something like Valhalla Room that's got a lot going on. This is really great as an intro into really cool reverb sounds. So Shimmer was influenced by Brian Eno's use of pitch shifters in the reverb chain. So what happens is if you put the shift up an octave, so that counts for semitones here, but we put the pitch mode into single, you should be able to hear that the pitch goes up every time it feeds back through the reverb, which is a really cool effect. And you get this sort of angelic, granular type of sound. And that's what Shimmer is really good at. I wouldn't say Shimmer's going to be the plugin for you if what you're looking to do is create like a realistic reverb. But if you want to create these like insane, huge cinematic reverb sounds, especially with like almost a hint of granularity to them, because you can kind of hear these sort of squared off modulation points in the reverb tail, then this is the plugin for you. Let's listen real quick. This is the sound of the Polysix on its own. Little bit of release, not too much. And I'm going to turn on Shimmer, but with the settings sort of zeroed out in a sense. Right now, the Shimmer is going to work something like a delay. Here we've got this doubling. Now as I increase the size, the delay time gets longer. So you can see immediately how you can use the size to almost create a pre-delay like you would on other plugins. We'll leave that at 50%. Now, as we increase the diffusion, starts to sound like a real reverb. And what's happening here is that's increasing the all-pass lines. And what that does is it smears the delay sound. But we still don't have something that sounds exactly like a realistic reverb. So to get that, we might want to increase a little bit of this feedback here. And what that's doing is now running the signal back through the whole chain. And this is where the magic happens, because as we, if I turn the feedback off, but increase the shift, so this is the amount of pitch shift and semitones every time it feeds back through the reverb line. I was going to say delay line. Right now we just have the reverb, but as I increase the feedback, now we can hear that famous Shimmer sound. Now, you'll notice that it says set to 6.18 for backwards reverb. So let's check that out real quick. So what's happening is the way this plugin works, certain points on the diffusion actually sort of change the way the buildup is. So below 6.18, the tail is longer than the buildup of the reverb. But right at 6.18, we get a very even amount of rise and fall of the tail. So, and of course, we can control the shape of this sound with the low cut and high cut. So let's bring this up. We can get it really thin, or we can get it really dark. So especially if you're going to use the shimmer effect, sometimes it can be useful to use the high cut so it doesn't get too weird sounding up top. It's a little bit nicer than if I leave it all the way open. Well, they're both cool, but for different types of sounds. Really, the modulation in this plugin isn't designed to be like a chorus reverb. It's more designed to break up the metallic nature of this reverb. So if I move this up to around here, we can get a very nice, lush sounding reverb. And that helps break up those metallic resonances. So here's without that, and maybe you can hear the difference. Not so bad in this setting. I think it could be more metallic depending on what mode you use. There's also 2 different color modes. So you can get more hi-fi sounds, but if you want to keep it more true to the sound of, say, Brian Eno, you'd want to use dark mode, but here's bright mode. There you can definitely hear some artifacting. So by using the mod depth, bringing this in. It's much more lush, more cinematic. But of course, if you take this too far, you can get kind of seasick sounding. Yeah, that's where it starts to get a little wonky as you move through it. Let's check out big stereo. This whole time we've been listening to medium stereo, but of course it gets even bigger. And here you can hear really well that the diffusion at 0.618, you can really hear how that takes a second for the reverb to build in. You get that, it takes a little time. So what you could do to offset this is either bring the diffusion down so it happens faster. Oh, actually I think in this setting, big stereo, it's just you've got a lot of built in, so we can lower the size, but maybe increase the diffusion again. Yeah, we have to lower the size, but maybe increase the feedback so we can get more. Oh, now we're getting huge. Wow. That's crazy. So the modulation depth, as you increase the feedback, becomes relevant here. So we actually need to turn that down because it's getting crazy. Now listen to the reverb tail, and you can hear there's this sort of noisy, like I said, it almost sounds like granular synthesis, the way that you have like these little cut up discrete echoes. And this plugin has a certain character to it that is completely unique. It's not necessarily something you'd want to use on every track because it can be difficult to work with this plugin and take a sound like this and, and like the sort of gray boxiness of it makes it difficult to fit in everywhere. It's not a real room sound. It's not going to really work on drums if you want to put this on a snare, for instance, and try to whatever. You're going to get a very fake reverb sound, but that's what's really cool about it. I mean, to me, I'm a slut for anything that sounds kind of Blade Runner-y. But we have these different sizes. So if we go to small stereo, for instance, we can get some sounds that maybe could be useful on something other than, making a giant Blade Runner room. Sounds a little bit more like a racquetball court and might be useful on something. Again, I don't really ever use this plugin as like my default vocal reverb because, plate reverb or something like that might work better or what have you. But yeah, it's just got a very unique character. And I want to show off one more sound that I use a bit. And what this is a preset that I took from Sean Costello talking about the MIDI verb. So the Elasis MIDI verb 2 had this weird way of saving on, I believe the way to explain this is instead of using coefficients of about 2/3, which don't round as easy, it would use coefficients of a half. And what that did was it created this kind of wonky sounding reverb, but at this setting, it will actually it really takes a long time to build and then die. So with this setting that's designed to emulate the Elasis MIDI Verb 2 Bloom, which I think is like patch 45 or something, you get this special way that the reverb builds and decays kind of equally. And again, it's just a really cool way to use this plugin in a way to emulate this kind of famous piece of digital reverb from, 90s glory. Listen to how noisy that is down low. I'm going to do that again. You can hear these weird sorts of noisy components going on. And that's because the way this plugin is made, it's not Sean's first plugin and therefore it's not as good. It's a very unique sort of digital noisy reverb sound. So what we can do here too, why don't we set the pitch mode? You'll notice there's a few different things here. If I set it to single here and I play a lower note, right, you can hear what it's doing and you get that squareness to the sound. Now if I go dual, you'll notice that there's actually pitches going down too. So what's happening is not only is it sending pitches, I don't know what I'm saying. Not only is it sending that reverb signal through a pitch shifter 12 semitones up or an octave up, so each time it gets higher and higher and higher, it's also getting lower and lower and lower. Pretty noisy though. So what we can do is actually put it in reverse mode. And what that's doing is it's taking those grains and reversing them. And the advantage of reversed grains is you get a smoother sound. You know, it's much more, there's a sort of more gentle nature to it. Wow, you can really hear it. It's much more orchestral like this. So I'll play this again. This is dual reverse. Wow, that's really beautiful. Versus dual, you really get those more chopped up little pieces of it in this mode. And of course, you can always bypass this if you don't want to use the pitch effect. But let's go back to single reverse, but actually just put it down an octave because this is the sort of sound that's on the Korg Prologue. I think it's called Submarine. It's actually quite useful sound when you're playing higher notes. So if you haven't noticed that when I'm using the shimmer going up, I'm using it at, it's easier to play low notes, but when you're up high here, you can do some cool like. You get these really beautiful sounds. Really evocative orchestral type sounds. So I recommend using it in the reverse mode if you're going to use that because you get that sort of a thing. So yeah, that's Valhalla Shimmer. There's a lot more depth with this plugin, but I just wanted to do a quick video covering this amazing plugin by Sean Costello because I've been using it for years and it's really stupid that I haven't done a review of it. I just haven't because been more interested in these synthesizers, but honestly, this plugin is an absolute steal. Everybody should have this plugin. Starsky Carr did a great comparison of Valhalla Shimmer to a Big Sky, and it's crazy how closely you can get those two things to sound. And Shimmer's $50, Big Sky's $400. Not just that, Shimmer could go much longer, so you can make much bigger delays, bigger reverbs with Shimmer than you could with a Big Sky. Now, having said that, there's always an advantage. There's always going to be people who like the hardware. Nothing wrong with that. Big Sky does sound really amazing, but I think for every producer who hasn't used this type of effect before, this is the default that everybody uses. And I think it's a little underrated as a reverb in terms of just like using it for reverb purposes. Again, maybe not perfect for like a tight drum room sound, like a natural drum room sound, or like a natural, vocal ballad reverb sound. But for sound design or just huge cinematic ambiances, I think this thing is in a class of its own and has a unique character. It doesn't just sound like every other reverb plugin. It doesn't sound like the default reverb in your DAW. So I hope you like that video. By the way, next week I'm going to be doing a playthrough of the Korg Polysix here. And so look for that video next week. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, makes a huge difference. Smash that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.